Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is grilled strip steak with compound butter. Today we're gonna go over how to make a very simple, very tasty steak at home. Just a strip steak, there's nothing too fancy about it. We are gonna pretty it up a little bit with a compound butter. And what that means is we're gonna mix a bunch of great flavors into a butter, let it solidify again in the fridge, and then we cut the pats out of the butter so that when we're finishing our steak, we can rest the steak on the butter and topped with butter to add extra flavor to the steak. So we're gonna start by making this compound butter. We'll start with 1 stick of unsalted butter, that's 4 ounces. Then we're gonna start adding our flavors to it. So let's get a little bit of minced garlic in there. We break our garlic down really fine. We don't want any big chunks of garlic because we're gonna be consuming this raw, essentially. And when garlic's raw, it's really got that spicy punch to it. So we don't ever wanna bite into a huge piece of raw garlic. And typically the way I handle this is break it down with the knife as much as possible, just slicing, and then go ahead and try and smash it down a bit as well. Dragging the knife across there. And then we'll go at it again. So 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. Next we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of Killer Hog's hot sauce, just for that little bit of vinegar punch and a little bit of spice. We're gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon now of the Jacobsen's black garlic sea salt. So use a high quality salt. Also want to get some lemon zest in there, so I'm gonna zest up 1/2 of this lemon, and we'll add about a 1/2 teaspoon of lemon zest to the mix. So this is gonna be really bright. You're gonna get this great bright lemon pop on the back end of this steak flavor, and it's all carried through that fat. Fat likes to carry flavor along. Last thing we'll do is throw some fresh cracked black pepper in there. Just do that to taste and give it a mix. All right, get that all distributed evenly, and then we're gonna roll this up. We're gonna stretch out a sheet of plastic wrap and place our butter down on the plastic wrap, just kind of in a line. Kind of like it was before we took it out of the packaging. We're gonna roll the plastic around the butter. Tighten that back a little bit. And twist the ends. And just wrap that up nice and tight. And then we'll throw that in the fridge to solidify, and we can cut out individual pats of this to use on your steak, on your bread, on anything. Now we're gonna keep the seasoning process on the steaks pretty simple today, but let's look at these steaks and talk about what it is that we're seeing. So these are strip steaks. They're also known as Kansas City strip or New York strip or a number of other names, but the thing to know is that this comes from the strip loin on the cow. What I'm looking for when I look at a strip steak is I want to see some marbling in the middle, some intramuscular marbling. That tells me that it's got a nice fat content, and I want a fairly thick steak. Like that's about, 1 inch cut. I wouldn't go any smaller than that for sure. A little bit bigger would even be my preference. So I'm gonna start by just drying off the surface to help us get a really nice crispy surface in the end. Take that excess moisture off of there. And then we're gonna add a little bit of oil, which again is going to help with a nice finish on the surface. So you wanna try and use a high temp oil, preferably not something that's going to get bitter as it burns off. This is a canola oil that happens to be infused with chili and garlic and onion. So it's gonna add that little bit of extra flavor. So we're just gonna massage that into the surface here. We'll flip and do the same thing on the other side. And this is also going to act now as a binder for our seasonings. We're really just gonna be using salt and pepper, but I would recommend using a nice quality salt. This one here is from Jacobsen Salt Company, and it's infused with black garlic. So again, we're getting a little bit more of that garlic flavor. We're gonna taste plenty of the beef in this, but we also wanna add a little something if we can. So let's get both sides of the steaks with the salt before we do some pepper. So another good thing to keep in mind when it comes to pepper, make sure you're cracking it fresh. You'll get a much fresher product out of that rather than something that's been ground up and sitting on the shelf for months on end. A simple spice grinder like this one goes a long way to adding flavor to your foods. And that's it. That's all we're doing before they go to the grill. Now today we're grilling on the Yoder Smoker's YS640S pellet grill. We've got it set at 450 degrees. It's set up for direct grilling, which means the flame from the firebox touches the meat. And the grates that we have installed are the grill grate panels, which are great for getting those awesome sear marks, that crosshatch pattern on your steak. So we're gonna go right over that direct flame here. And we're starting to really set some marks into these. But more importantly, as the fat starts to drip off, it runs into these troughs, flares back up, and that adds even more flavor to our steaks when it gets a little bit of that flare up. Now you could be doing this grilling on any type of grill, whether it's a pellet grill like this one, a charcoal grill, a gas grill. In all situations, the next question that comes to mind is, now do I shut the lid or do I leave it open, or how do I do that? For me, what I like to do is I like to make sure that I get as much color on the outside as I want first, and then I want to make sure that I raise the internal temperature to where I want to finish it. In this case, we're going to go for about 120 to 125 today. So I'm going to leave it open for now, because right now, all it's doing is it's taking on color and slowly warming up. As soon as we close this lid down, we trap the heat in there and we accelerate that process of the internal temperature rising up to where we want it. So we're going to start wide open, get the color we want, and we can always close it down later if we need to. So you can see we've got some nice color on here, and the fact that it just peeled right off without any resistance tells you that this was ready to flip. If you get any sticking, that just means I'm not quite ready to let go yet. And so you leave that steak just a little bit longer. But here we can see that the protein has released itself from the grates, so it's ready to be flipped. All right, so we're getting some nice grill marks on the opposite side now. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn these a little bit to get that little crosshatch going on. There we go. So internal temperature now, dead center, 100 or just shy of 100, which is great. That gives us a little bit of room to work with as far as getting some more color on the outside. All right, we're looking good here, so we're gonna flip these. Now, as we flip these, you're probably gonna see a little flare-up action. At this point, the fat's really rendering out. And those little flare-ups, they can add a lot of flavor to your food. All right, so we've reached that 120 mark. We're gonna pull these off and let them rest. All right, so we have our compound butter that's firmed back up. We're gonna cut this into some discs here. And then as we rest the steak, we're gonna rest it with the butter. So let's put a little bit down right here. Each plate gets its own steak, gets its own butter. And that can kind of just melt in as the steak rests. Got a little juice in the pan that we transferred these over with, so we'll add those to the top as well. Don't want to waste any flavor. Just kind of work that butter in there to help it along, melting down. So looking at the outside of this steak, it's rested a few minutes now. We've got some nice grill marks, which means we've got a little bit of that grill flavor. Now with a grilled steak, you're never gonna get that perfect sear all the way across. It's just a different type of steak, a different kind of cooking method. But what you will get, and what you don't get out of cooking in a skillet, is that wood-fired flavor, especially off the pellet grill here. Let's just look at the center of that. Nice pink center. Incredibly juicy. Look at all the fat running out of that. Oh. Simple, delicious. The execution takes very little work, right? But the payoff is so big. I mean, beef is the big star of the show here, right? But just to get that hint of lemon and the fattiness of that butter, that fat carries that flavor throughout your mouth, as well as the juices that are inside of that steak. I mean, that fat carries that flavor as well. And then just the amount of moisture. Cooked properly, we would call this a medium rare, 125-ish, about where we finish when it comes to a resting time, after that resting time. And it wasn't long, maybe 5 minutes. Incredible. You guys can do this at home. It's really simple, nothing to be intimidated by. The strip steak is a great place to start because it's got a little bit of fat in it. It's not super fatty like a ribeye, but it's not so lean like a sirloin. It's really a great place to start if you're wondering, how do I get good at cooking steaks? So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All Things Barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.